We're live. Welcome everybody to our next Talking Talent on scaling startups and taking your early stage hiring from 0 to 1. I'm sure there's a lot of people today that are already familiar with our format for Talking Talent. So welcome back to those. And also for the ones that don't know Talking Talent yet, I want to explain the event format quickly, and then we'll go into the format of the webinar itself today. So during Talking Talent, we invite speakers on this virtual stage to share insights on topics related to the future of work. And today we focus on how to take your early stage hiring from 0 to 1. And we invited 3 founders that are in the midst of figuring out how to do this, and also can share like the learnings and the war stories that they experienced on the way with yourself, and share some best practices from there as well. After the panel, we encourage you to put questions in the question box on the right side here, because we go into audience Q&A afterwards as well, and then you can ask the founders everything that you're wondering. Also, before we kick off the panel, I want to quickly introduce Accelerate. So we are a recruitment startup based in Berlin and London. We offer an embedded recruiting service where our talent partners become part of your team in order to hire great people for your team. This is the in-house model that we're offering, but we also offer additional recruiting services, and that is of executive recruitment and employer branding as well. We are currently working with Max and Christian from Back and Spectrum. So if you're wondering how the services of Accelerate are in real life, you can ask them for some references. And please get in contact with myself after the event if you need any help related to hiring as well. I didn't go through the slides. So this is our team of Accelerate. These are the different services that I just mentioned. And these are the speakers that are speaking tonight. I would actually want to ask the speakers to introduce themselves, and then we go into the panel, and then afterwards we end with a Q&A there as well. So please, Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Christian. I'm originally from Hamburg. I have a wild background. I studied philosophy and economics, but did coding during my high school, and then ended up working in Rocket Internet for some while, then started my own company called MeNotes, where we do retail analytics for offline retailers. And after we sold that company, we started a new company called Back. And what Back is doing essentially is helping scale-ups to organize their requests from employees into HR, into finance, into legal and IT operations, and helps you to also do that over Slack and email, the channels you already use, connect that with tools you already use like Personio and Confluence, and automate some of the workflows and knowledge requests that your employees might have.
Right.
Okay, I go next. Hello, my name is Max. Also, thank you for having me. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Spectrum. Spectrum is a conversational marketing platform. That means we use the scale from Facebook and Messenger to drive people into a conversation, into an automated conversation where a chatbot is talking you through products and so on, recommending the right products, and then you click on that and then you likely buy that. And we work with the eBays, the Fords, and the Renaults of the world together. So classic enterprise B2B startup. I was actually studying or graduated also with law. I'm a background in law, and per accident I got into this space and figured out how to really build a startup that is a pure tech startup with a lot of machine learning. So that's quite a story, and obviously all the folks at the team helped me to get us to this point where we are right now.
Thank you, Mike. Welcome. And Michael, could you give us more introduction?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, yeah, it's Accelerate. But yeah, so my name is Michael from UK, from Birmingham. Yeah, graduated from university, started a startup in like e-commerce in fashion. Did this for about a year, ran out of money, and went into the recruiting industry. In a very classical agency in the UK. Was really a cool experience, but kind of was a bit perplexed of how kind of Wolf of Wall Street it was compared to our clients who were like startups and scale-ups, and kind of thought, how can this kind of be done better? So over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, been just growing and accelerate and seeing how we can change the kind of mediocre kind of customer and candidate experience that people have from agencies into a better experience with Accelerate. And I don't want to bore you with the services and everything because we did that introduction at the beginning.
Nice, thank you, Michael. I want to dive into the first panel question that was also stated in the description, and that is, how do you get your first hires on board? And I want to, we can do an open floor, but let's kick off with Max. How did you get your first hires at Spectrum on board?
That was, I would say, only the personal network. So I had friends which were, did some computer science, or some friends that I know that they're natural salespersons. So if I get this person on board, it doesn't matter what they do. They can sell everything. They can sell a car, they can sell, I don't know, computer, or they can also sell probably software. So that was basically how everything started, was only the personal network, and friends. We tried some things on LinkedIn, and there was one lucky shot. So that worked as well. But usually it's the personal network.
Well, what did you try on LinkedIn then? You posted something? Or?
On LinkedIn, I really, as basic as you can imagine, I was searching for a specific person that was working for or had experience in natural language processing, which was back when we started something fairly young, very, very new, and especially in Berlin, very rare. That changed now. But I found one person that was already doing that, and I wrote that person a message, and that person was willing to meet, and in the end we hired the person, and until today I'm absolutely surprised, because I would say that was just a random LinkedIn message from a very, very early stage startup. Why did he even answer that? But he did, and he joined, and he's still on board, and he's one of our absolute top and best employees we have. So that's also a story that how it can work out. You need luck, I would say. How did you get your first hires on board? Luck. Luck is very important.
And Michael, would you say the same, that it's a lot of luck that you need, and maybe anything else as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of random circumstances, right? So when I first moved to Berlin about 4 years ago, I was playing the football team here, and I was at the S-Bahn, and there was a person there from the team that day. We got chatting, and they were like, I'm not really feeling my role at the moment. Like we're with a SaaS company here in Berlin, kind of thinking about something new. I was just on my own in Berlin at the time, so I said, okay, why don't you just come in and have a chat with me? Not even with us, just with me. Came in, and then that was the kind of first hire. Found a lot of success in the next couple of hires through different kind of platforms, like AngelList was really, really good at the beginning, because you could kind of find young people who were really interested in just joining startups and wanted to get their kind of hands dirty, and found a lot of success. I think, Isabel, you were like the third, fourth hire. So maybe to reverse the question on you there. But yeah, I always found kind of not going over the top in terms of what we could kind of promise as a company was actually quite a good filtering mechanism to get people who actually really want to join to build something, as well.
So telling the truth, basically, about how the company...
Being completely honest, not having the over-the-top kind of jobs page and all this, and people who can actually kind of see through that was actually quite interesting to kind of filter the real builders who wanted to come on board for that reason. I found actually was quite a good mechanism.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so what I hear, network is really important with some random luck, and then also really telling your real story, right? Telling the truth there. Christian, do you have anything to add there on getting your first hires on board?
I think it's very important to build trust, and that's why it's important to be not over the top. I remember when we were doing our first hires, we didn't have funding, we didn't have a product, we didn't even have an office. So we always met at this coffee place around Rosenthaler in Berlin. And people were probably thinking, like, is this even real? But yeah, I mean, like, it was real, and then somehow we persuaded some people. But you don't do that by promising the world. You do that by basically laying out your vision and how you get there, right? So I think that was kind of the main step for us. We also used our network. We didn't hire people from the network actually so much, but we used them to identify good people within networks of networks. That was kind of the thing that we tried in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Cool. And when do you then? That actually now question popping up in my head. But when do you make your recruitment more serious? So, Michael, you mentioned a few platforms that you were using here and there, and Max, you already used LinkedIn to reach out here and there as well. So, when do you take that next step in making maybe somebody responsible for recruitment as well?
So in terms of having someone who's actually, I think as the founder, I think you will be responsible for quite a while, and trying to pass that knowledge over to your team. That's what I found very good. I mean, once you get the first kind of couple of people in a room, you can really learn a lot by osmosis, and taking that time I found was quite useful to kind of try and pass on the principles of the business to that first 3 or 4 people in the room, and then see kind of what people they kind of refer in to the process as well. Was really good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Let's go to the next panel topic as well, to not go away from what we want to focus on. So how do you stand out compared to more established startups? I think a lot of people or a lot of attendees today are just found their startups and they want to bring their 4th or 5th hire on board. And they have a lot of competition from big companies out there with great employer brands, with great recruiting teams that really nudge the right talent. So how do you as an early stage startup then stand out in your network and in those people that you speak to? Christine, you want to take this question?
Yeah, sure. I think ultimately you're selling something completely different, because the opportunity in an early stage startup is very different to one in an established scale-up or tech company. So I would actually question a little bit if the candidate wants maybe to join an established startup. You should be talking with a candidate of like what the expectation is that they actually want to do in the next year or 2. And if the answer is, I want to learn leadership and manage a lot of people, then probably it's not the place for an early stage startup, because you can only manage so many people in like a 20 people environment or 30 people environment. But if the answer is, I want to have impact and I want to learn different things and I want to start my own company in 5 years, then these are the people you're looking for. So I think actually your pitch needs to be around, like, you have way more impact in this kind of environment. And then obviously there needs to be some interest in terms of what you're building actually, right? So that would be the other thing I would try to emphasize on.
Yeah, so make it really personal as well, right? Telling your story there and the story of your company. Yeah, Michael, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I'd add like vulnerability, right? So I don't think, as Christian said, I think just being honest and being almost vulnerable to the candidates in terms of we don't know how to do this. I think this will kind of attract the best people who want to come in and build things. And just, I think this honesty and transparency builds trust. For you to filter, I don't think you want to play a charade game just because you want a really great name to come on board, and then when they come in on the first week, they're like, this isn't exactly what was pitched to me. So this kind of honesty and vulnerability, I think, attracts the best people for that stage of company.
Yeah. Yeah, and how did you experience that, Max, when you got the first people on board?
I can echo a lot what Christian already said, or Michael mentioned about impact, but also getting the hands dirty, because that's what a lot of people actually are looking for. That they can, get very broad knowledge compared to when you join a scale up or a large corporation where you basically are just develop very narrow knowledge in a field, compared to where when you start in a big marketing organization, you probably just work on one piece of social advertising, and in a startup you learn how to connect email to social to display to everything. So you have a completely different learning curve. It's also much steeper because nobody can help you with the challenges. You really have to read it or experiment a lot. So I think the learning curve, what kind of knowledge you get, I think that's important. And the second one I would also say is the team. So in the end, of course, you join a company, but first and foremost, you join a team, and you need to enjoy that. And if you can illustrate how the team is, how that works, and that you're so close and have so much impact by how the team operates, how to change, how we organize our daily business, I think that's very attractive to candidates, because that's what you actually want, right? So you care a lot about the people you work with every day, and if you can have an impact and join a cool group of people, I think that's very attractive compared to a scale up where you might just shift around teams and you don't know the persons you're going to work with next week. So I think that's a big advantage.
Yeah, I think what I can hear also from all the answers, and also answer on the previous question, it is also that there is a lot of explaining. You need to explain this really to the talent that you're speaking to, right? So what they get themselves into, and this is actually explaining the situation is already selling the situation, basically selling the company and selling the opportunity and career chances they have. Great, thank you so much for these answers. Then also from the other side, right? I heard a few things already in your answer there, Christian. But how do you, as founders, identify this great startup talent that is also up for the challenge that you just shared, Max, on where you come into a role and into an environment where you're actually not in one job only, but really like you're building a startup, right? So how do you identify talent that is great in these environments?
I think it's obviously identifying the right talent that's the crucial thing, and that's the masterpiece where everybody tries to master, but with every single hire. But if it comes to general startup talent, I think there are probably two groups. The one group already knows that they want to join a startup for reason X, Y, and Z, because they know about the industry, they know how it works. They're very excited about getting virtual equity or stock options in a company, and that's the reason why they're joining, because they know there is that slight 1%, 2% chance that this is going to be successful, and there's also quite a lot of money or money involved. So that's one group of people which already know what kind of industry they are, and there are others, I would say, which are not familiar yet with what startup actually means. And here you have to completely look for different traits and different skills, because they're not excited about this kind of journey and ride. And here you have to look for something else. And I would say when it comes to both, you look for people that are resilient, right? So you have a lot of backsets and showstoppers at a startup. A lot of the things you imagined won't work. So you want to have people that are willing to go the roller coaster up and down with the startup. One day, even sometimes in hours, you feel like, yes, we are the best team in the world and we will crush it. And the next day you feel, everything is going to fail because we had one critical bug. That's the first thing. The second thing is you want to have people that they're willing to go the extra mile, that if it's getting hard, that they are also doing the night shift. So I think that's something you want. And then people that are willing to learn and to grow. I think this growth mentality, that's the third thing I would always look for, because if you have that, then you can grow together and you don't have to replace people at every startup stage you get. Yeah,
nice summary. Michael, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I think it's it. Just looking back on my own personal experience, I think it's important to kind of understand what kind of people you want to attract first and foremost. Just at the beginning of the process, and kind of notice why. And then I think it's also important, as I noticed this myself. I know about recruiting when I started the business, but I don't know about lots of other disciplines. So how can I actually assess this talent correctly? And I think it's important, maybe what helped a lot of times when we're hiring for like sales role or anything like this is having some other like network experts who can just bounce ideas. Is this like a top person or is this kind of okay? This kind of helps a lot of time because I would find it difficult to recognize this. I look like at the beginning really like hiring kind of weird people in a way, because I think you gotta be a bit weird to join a startup when it's like 2-3 people. So really trying to kind of attract those people like with energy as well, because I think as Max said there, it's gonna be lots of ups and downs, so you need to have people who have this kind of energy and can kind of go with the ups and downs and the resilience there as well. And then I think people who you're interviewing them, and you're kind of the best, when I look back on it, of the people who really have turned out great, I've kind of interviewed them and I've thought to myself, okay, I'm gonna have some difficulties working with this person in some way, because they're gonna kind of highlight maybe one of my maybe weaknesses or something like that, but they are actually brilliant and I kind of want to bring them on board. And I think this helps the company grow. It helped the company grow a lot on things that we didn't have the skills for as well. So kind of embracing that tension. These are kind of like a few things. And then I think like maybe the last point is this kind of ownership mentality. People are not coming in just to it's not a normal job at a really early stage, and I think that just is transparency on it, and people who really think like owners. So one kind of interesting interview question that I do like to ask is kind of, if you were CEO of your last company, what would you have done kind of differently? So I think a good candidate would think about that, and they've already thought about it. So they're going back home on the S-Bahn and they're thinking about, this needs to be done differently in the company. This needs to be done differently in the company. And they would have thought about that in their last role. And by the quality of that answer, I think you can kind of identify maybe if they've got like this ownership mentality as well, which I think is really important at the early stage, because you want people who are going to take things off your plate and actually really run with it like owners. These are just a few little things kind of picked up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And cool that you share your favorite interview question as well. I would love to hear that later on from the other speakers.
Okay.
As well. And Christian, how did you experience that with Beck? How did you identify that first talent?
Yeah, I mean, that's the best question, right? It's the biggest question to answer. I think if you like, for us, if we look back the last 2 years that we've building the company, and then also building my previous company, it comes down to one thing: are you really, really excited to bring that person on board? And if the team is excited, usually those things go out well. And then obviously there's a million tactical things that you can do to basically figure out how you screen for specific skills or specific team fits. And I agree with Michael, you want to have people that have ownership, you want to have people that are changers and not complainers. I think to a certain baseline, these things are probably pretty common in startup world, but I think what makes sense for you is also in the beginning to sit down and say, this is kind of the like attributes we'd like to see at a baseline for every talent we hire, and then basically the 2-3 things that a specific person in a specific role like sales or marketing should do like very well. And then you need to balance out the team. So the first hire, maybe that's a very creative person, then you want to have a second hire that's very analytical. So it's really hard to say like on like overall how that works out. What we found very helpful is to take an approach that is what we call nurturing. So we don't basically go out and say we need to hire a sales manager tomorrow, but we basically look at the business and say we probably need a sales hire in that position the next year. So let's already start talking to experts in the field and let's ask them, how are you doing your interviews? What are tricks you learned in your interviews? What are the questions that separates the great talent from the average talent in your field? Because as a founder, I can only know so many things, and probably in my team the same. And usually in an early stage startup, you will always hire for new roles that you don't know so well. So kind of our approach is kind of talking to a lot of experts in that field, and then basically reaching out to talent in that field, start discussions, not necessarily like we have a position open, but just like, it's interesting what work you do at that company. Can you explain me how that works? And then you stay in touch, and maybe later on that person will be sitting next to you at a desk. Maybe not, but you learn a lot in that process.
Yeah, that's a great way to also build out your network, right? To come with these quite specific questions to the experts in the field. And yeah, I love it that you, in that way, you already design your interview guide basically on what you're going to ask the candidates as well, because you're learning or educating yourself on the role.
Yeah.
Nice. And Max, you stated a few things on what you're then looking for in startup talent, right? So how do you get that out of the talent in interviews to really know if they are the ones you're looking for?
If they have experience already, right? If you're hiring for a more senior position, then obviously you can try to figure this out with the common interview techniques where you refer to with situation questions, and you try to assess how they handled or how they did that in the past. You can also try, if you're looking for a specific trait in that, you always can also adjust your challenge you send to the candidates, which we do with all roles, to that the challenge is basically proving that or checking on this. I think that's also a good one. But I think overall it's you learn a lot already from if they're excited, or that's also, I think Christian mentioned this, are they excited about the product, about the market? That's something you can very easily prove by talking about that, about talking the opportunity, of talking about the market, figure out how well they did their homework or if there is any particular interest. So for example, one of our questions, so we have a platform where our customers can build chatbots for Facebook Messenger and others. So one of my questions is, what's your favorite chatbot? Right? If they never tried out a chatbot and they never really did this, why do you interview for a company that is doing that? Because that's a very easy question, which is very quickly revealing if the candidate is excited about the space. So that's how we and I do that.
I think the simple questions are key here, right, as well, because that sparks those really interesting discussions as well. Thank you so much for sharing. The next topic, this is the first last topic, so we have one more afterwards. How do you balance being selective and meeting business deadlines at the same time? So how selective can you actually be at the early stage startup, or like where do you really compromise and you still want to grow the business and maybe you don't have the highest budget, but you want to get that talent on board? So how do you make this decision? Max, you want to go?
Oh, sure. I mean, obviously, if you hire a person always too late, right? So that's usually the case for an early stage startup. So when you hire, that role has been desperately missed for the past few months. So you will always be behind your deadline or your an imagined deadline. So I think that's important to say upfront. Where can you make compromises regarding that if you really have to quickly fill the role? Because, for example, you're losing revenue because of that, because you cannot take in all the opportunities, or you have customers that are churning because there's not enough support for them to help them with their problems. So those kind of situations, I would always say I would make no compromise when it comes to team fit and culture fit of a startup, because here it's very easy to ruin that with the wrong personality, which is changing the full vibe, the entire vibe of the team. So that's something where I would never compromise. Where I would compromise is when it comes to experience, because often, even if you do background checks, you cannot properly assess how the experience really is. Just because that person had a fancy job title at a scale up, a different startup and so on, doesn't mean that this person, or even a corporate, that doesn't mean that the person has the experience you're looking for. So I would make no compromise regarding when it comes to culture and team fit. I would make little compromises when it comes to skills. So skills I can check in a challenge. And I would make compromises when it comes to experience, because you're a startup. I started right after university, so I'm actually have no experience at all. I had to learn everything. And if the person is smart and it's willing to learn, then the person will probably, hopefully, also figure out along the way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Christian, you also had a quite sad idea about this.
Yeah, so I believe you can be very selective, and you should be very selective. So if you compare the early stage versus the later stage, I would say be more selective in the early stage, because you are right now building the foundation of your team culture and all the internal work philosophies and everything. So I'd be rather more selective in the beginning, to be honest. I think what Max described is essentially you as the founding team sitting down and saying, so what are the business priorities right now? Can we achieve that without having anybody? If yes, then you don't need to hire anyway. If no, then you have different options, right? Then you can say, do we want to compromise on some part of the role? Do we want to do it with some other kind of setup? So, for example, we maybe wanted to have that specific position, but might be easier to hire a different other position first that could also fill that specific topic, but it's maybe easier to hire. So you can shift around in your planning, but you can also use freelancers. So, I mean, especially now that the ecosystem in Europe and Berlin has grown quite a lot over the last years, there are so many great people that can also help you on short notice. So I'd rather opt in and getting some great freelancers on board for a couple of months instead of just bringing on somebody on board that would take longer. And maybe Accelerate is actually a great example for that, because our belief was that we wanted to have good recruiting function, because recruiting for us is really crucial in terms of building out the company. So we wanted to bring in somebody who has experience, but I knew that would take me actually probably 3 months to bring in somebody who's great at that. So actually, the way we went with you was way more business, better for the business in a way. And we got somebody who's really experienced and can bring in a lot of positives for us immediately, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you give that as an example, of course, but also stating that you're using the freelancers and your network again in sort of a creative way. So not only connecting to your network, not only getting information from freelancers, but really finding the right construction to build this early phase startup in a really smart way, or to build your teams in a really smart way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, sometimes you realize when you basically start by, hopefully you start by defining what the position should look like, or what that person should roughly look like in terms of skills and attributes you want to screen for. And then maybe you realize that person is really hard to find right now, because a lot of people are looking for it, or because there's actually not so many people in Berlin. So you have do you want to hire somebody remote? So we started hiring remote very early on, actually. A couple of our first hires then were remote. So I think there is so many options you can take into account that I think the worst is what Max basically mentioned is don't compromise on the team fit. I think these are usually discussions I've seen in the past is, yes, that person fits all our requirements in terms of the position, but we have a bad feeling in terms of team fit. Don't hire that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Great piece of advice. And Michael, do you want to add here?
No, some really great points there, especially what Max said there about compromising on team fit and coach fit. I think everyone's probably kind of seen that firsthand. You have somebody who's highly skilled, even from experience, and you're we can compromise, but then you see it kind of in action, and you see what kind of effect that can have on the business, and kind of leveraging freelancers as well is something that we've done to meet some business deadlines on maybe skill sets outside of us, like web development and on the marketing stuff as well, as being really good. I think, but kind of being at early stage though, I think it is okay to say to not be like too conservative at the same time, because the fact of the matter is you probably will make wrong hires. As well. I don't think there's any company in the world that made their first 100 hires as 10 out of 10s, and it's just gone perfectly to the moon. You will probably make wrong hires. I think, but the key thing is once you do this, you identify this and have like a good feedback loop into kind of why things don't work out, in terms of if you bring somebody on board, it doesn't work out, exactly why, and let's ensure we kind of all learn from that and put that into our processes going forwards. Because maybe too much of the perfectionist mindset in the pressure of we're going to make all our hires perfect is maybe too much pressure as well. And then the next thing is like when you have people on board, kind of asking yourself, kind of, are we actually equipped to get the best out of the people as well, which can kind of help when you bring on people who maybe don't have all the kind of skills and experience, but how can we get people ramped up as fast as possible and most effectively as well. But like with Accelerate, like our product is our people, so it's something that we have to, it's so important to be selective, and having churned customers and things like this in reputation can be kind of really damaging to the company, and it takes many months to get that back.
It will make sense. Being selective but still keep on going, I think that is what you hear in the advice.
Exactly. And I think that you can do that by just kind of filling. It sounds crazy, but it is a numbers game at the same time. You kind of making sure you've seen enough people for that position. Filling the bottom of the pipeline there, and making sure you're actually meeting enough people to see what great looks like as well. Because there's lots of humans in this world who are looking for roles.
Nice. To close down the panel questions, and before we go into the audience Q&A, I'm already seeing quite a lot of questions coming in, so it's going to be interesting. What piece of advice would you give to early stage founders that are going through a similar stage of growth now? So like, what is the one piece of advice out of all the pieces that you gave that you really want to emphasize on and give to somebody that is currently bringing those first people on board? Christian, you want to start?
For hiring, right?
Yes, for hiring.
Tough without knowing the context, but I would personally say be involved as a founder. From the founder perspective, I think there's not a lot of things that are more crucial than getting the right people. So that would be kind of my main advice. Like spend it, it will be brutal. Like you will always underestimate how much time recruiting takes and hiring the right people. And you will be amazed by the sweat you have to put in. But in the end, I think it's worth it, because it's also one of the most rewarding things to see if you did the right hire and how they integrate into the group and how they developed inside the company. So this is basically one of the main parts why you're probably doing the job. So spending the time for that.
Yeah, be involved. Okay, nice. And for you, Michael, the one piece of advice you want to give?
Yeah, I'd say it's difficult with hiring. I think there's lots, but as I think to expand on what Christian said it's definitely spending time as a founder, kind of doing it, but making sure. I think if I went back now, kind of 4 years ago, I would have spent a lot more time, kind of spending more time with my team in terms of trying to pass this knowledge on. I can really spend in good 15-20% of the time trying to pass actually this knowledge on and kind of codifying this and ensuring that there's another person in the organization who can kind of scale that out as well. And then really trying to look at what excellence looks like as well, if you're not familiar with certain roles. So these were the two pieces of advice I'd give.
Yeah, nice. And for you, Max?
I think what I can echo what the others just said. I think that is really, really valuable piece of advice. The one I would give on top of that is I would say all the mistakes we made in hiring came from ignoring that. And this is, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. If you have that weird feeling where Christian was describing this as excitement for a person, so when you feel in an interview process that you develop that feeling, I would be, and not devastated, but I would be quite upset if I now get the email, hey, I'm joining a different startup, or I'm joining a different company from that person. Then you know you're on the right track. Then this person excites you, then you want that person to join. If you don't have that feeling, it's not a hell yes, then it's no, because it's just not there, not the excitement for being part. And you feel that as a founder, because you know that he or she will fit in so perfectly into the team, and she will bring the business forward, or the engineering, or whatever. So I think that's what my one piece of advice. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Nice. Okay, cool. I think a lot of founders can really use that piece of advice and adjust it as well. Apply it, I mean, sorry. Okay, let's go into the audience Q&A. So on the right side, you can, of this chat, you can see a question box, and people can still add their questions and also upvote questions that they find interesting. I will start with the first questions coming from Annie, that is upvoted the most. Annie is also a recruiter at Beck, so Christian, you might already be familiar with the question, but what do people need to do, or what do people need to do if they want to join an early stage startup like yours? Do you have any special tips during this COVID times?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main advice would be, especially if you're looking actively for a job now, I think there are so many websites right now that are listing companies that are still hiring. I think this is a good first step in terms of identifying possible targets where you might be enjoying working. But I think as employer, you're looking for people that are actually interested in the work you're doing and the vision you're pursuing. So I wouldn't spread my applications too wide, and rather pick like the 5 companies I would be really interested in working at, and do some research there and so on. Because I think that makes a lot of difference. As Max basically also mentioned before, like if I'm talking to a chatbot company and I've never even like maybe tried out one, then like I have to have a pretty good reason why this is the most interesting place for me to work. And I don't think necessarily that's the only criteria you need to have in terms of like what's the product, but like that's definitely a contributing factor. So that would be kind of my advice.
Yeah, go a bit deep into the companies that you want to work for instead of high quantity then. Yeah. And for you, Michael? What does somebody need to do to join an early stage startup like Accelerate? Especially during these times of COVID-19.
Yeah, it's gonna be quite a lot. I can imagine at the moment quite a lot of hustle, really. It really depends. Yeah, kind of directly reaching out to people, you know, who you kind of want to work for, and yeah, try not to go just the generic approach, and just knowing that just applying on a career website is probably not going to be enough. And then just being realistic that maybe the role won't come around in the next month or 2 or 3 months. There's a lot of it's ambiguous time, and trying to take this kind of CRM approach, which is kind of building relationships up, genuine relationships up with people, and knowing that they may be able to be banked in 3 to 6 months time. I think it's a really great time to build relationships up with people in the industry right now. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Like one thing I did quite early on in my career is try and, like, people I really, really admire, just try and send 1 or 2 emails a week to them. And you'd be quite surprised what feedback you actually get if they're quite tailored, over time, and this kind of compound interests over time is a good way to build up your network. Yeah.
What do you state in those emails?
You're doing some dope stuff. Let's chat. And exactly why. And yeah, just people who really. I even now I'm starting to get a few emails that are people, but the ones that really kind of filter, like I just kind of get what you're trying to do in some kind of way, and are short and snappy and. Let's just chat, and I think you'd be surprised how open people are, especially in the technology industry. That's why I found when I came to Berlin, I was really surprised at how much kind of the coffee culture, I suppose it's like the Zoom culture now, of just passing on knowledge as well, and don't expect any kind of instant rewards from that straight away, but just do it for the sake of learning. And I think in 3 to 6 months time, you're going to see a lot different, and you can really bank that then. But patience as well.
Yeah, cool, nice. And for Max, would you have anything to add to those two?
You're asking specifically for COVID times. COVID times means that many startups stopped hiring or starting to freeze hiring. So if you want to approach them, I would be mindful about the challenges which the market is currently providing. And if you are mindful about this and addressing this directly, I think there's a good chance that people will talk to you, because that is really important. You understand the business and you understand how the founder or how the management team is thinking. And if you're talking in their language, they will talk back. I think that's the first one. If you're having trouble to find something because you are not yet qualified, or it's really a complete freeze in every company you like, I would start building stuff. Everybody can do this. You can start a blog, you can start with your Figma account or building your design portfolio, or you can start with your public GitHub and so on, start to build stuff. And that has a compound effect over time, because people will see that, and the more that is related to the company or the type of company I want to work for, the more likely it gets that they will pick up on your emails over time. And yeah, if we're a chatbot company, you would say, I built 5 different chatbots doing this and that different styles and so on. I want to work for you. And I said, yeah, let's have a conversation. That sounds good. Just an example.
Yeah, add value, make yourself relevant. It's a really great tip, Max. Thank you. I will move on to the next question from Teslim. What is your view on C-level roles within a startup? Is this one that the founder should automatically fill? And if not, at what point is best to hire and from where? So how do you get your C-level people on board? Christian, do you have an idea here?
Yeah, did that before. It's always tough to find the right timing. It always depends highly on which kind of startup you are building, and I think there were some more questions about co-founders and how many and so on, and this is highly linked to the C-level roles. So there's no good answer that fits everything. In my industry, we're working in SaaS. There are some very specific benchmarks on when most SaaS companies hire their CMO or their VP of sales. So there is some specific playbooks that you can look probably inside your industry, but still it's a decision of the company and the founding team in the end. It depends on how the founder team in the beginning would be set up, right? So for Back, we have a CTO who's a co-founder. Some companies start as only business founders, and then they need to look for maybe a lead engineer, but maybe a CTO directly. So there are a lot of questions which are difficult to answer. Personally, or at Back, we don't give a lot of titles. There is no specific C titles in the beginning. Obviously, there's in the co-founders towards investors, there's a CTO and a CEO, but doesn't really matter inside the company, and we don't have like C-level at this point. Probably will have for quite some time, not some C-levels. This is something that becomes an issue, I think, when you want to hire very senior talent, but you need to be at a stage to actually use those people. So it can also be a mistake to hire somebody, let's say, I would be finding somebody who let's say, actually know the CEO of Zendesk, and I'm pitching them, hey, we're actually creating the Zendesk for internal requests right now, and we do automation and workflows, and it's booming. Do you want to become our COO? I know like that person who's leading a stock company wouldn't be the right fit for like back at the stage we are right now. So would be very careful about that. But there's no right or wrong in that. It's like very special situations always.
Yeah, it's making a decision there and planning ahead. And for you, Max, how is that at Spectrum? Or how is that planned out at Spectrum?
So I would echo what Christian just said. It's just, we have, in SaaS, you have really well-defined benchmarks for people that are much smarter than I am, and they have a lot more experience than I have. So we can have some guidance here, but as a general principle, don't go for titles. I mean, that's the least important thing in the startups. On the one hand, obviously, that's also in the famous Ben Horowitz book, titles are very cheap, right? So it's very easy to give out a fancy title, and it doesn't actually matter. So that's how you always make the decision, right? But what you don't want to do is you don't want to give out too many titles that are too senior, because out of a sudden you have 5 different kings of France in your company, and then you realize maybe we have to hire someone above that. So we did this mistake. We had at the beginning people that were head of something, and they were the only person, and they're going to be the only person for quite a while. So that doesn't actually make sense. And when you have to bring in more senior people because that person is not growing so quickly that you can hire just under that person, you either have to take away the title, which is, title doesn't matter, but taking away a title, not really possible. It's a very difficult thing. So avoid titles by as much as you can. Describe precisely what the person is doing and probably call that a lead or something like this, but keep it with that. And C-level at an early stage company, if they're not the founders, I would not do that.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hard to take it away once you gave it, right?
Yeah.
And Michael, what is your take on this?
Well, Accelerate, I wouldn't say we have kind of like C-level at this point. We have people growing into like leadership positions, but maybe I can say a bit from experience when recruiting for kind of other companies. I think some of the same principles, even at early stage, do still go for when you're hiring some of these titles in terms of like transparency on the position. So if somebody is looking for that title, and I know it can be very difficult when you're maybe in front of somebody who has all this great experience and worked at these great companies, but still being able to have the strength of character to say to the face, this won't be the title right now. I think it's really important gatekeeper for your company, because I think once you start getting this title mentality in the company, it can change the culture of the company a lot. So I think as the founder, you should be the gatekeeper to doing that and having a clear vision of how your company could scale in which ways, and try to be quite strategically minded on the scenarios that could play out over the next 6 to 18 months if your company does grow. And I think again, the best people will be still interested if your vision is that strong as well. I wouldn't say to write off people from corporates. Only this is from my recruiting experience as well, because I think there is a good identifier for people from larger companies. If they're the person in the larger company who are like, why is this not done like the way you guys are doing it in my company? But it's quite similar. That actually some of those people I've noticed, and just a few data checking, have gone into the startups and actually done really well. But again, just this transparency, as well. But as I said, at Accelerate, we don't currently have any kind of C-level roles at this point, even though we are looking to do that over the next years.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Thank you so much, all. And then this question slightly relates to this as well. Sinem, she is asking in which stage I should hire the first person coming from corporate companies. So with many years of experience related to the role. So which stage do you really bring also indeed the corporate people with a corporate background in the company, or maybe already from the beginning on, but what is your take on that? Christian.
So yeah, difficult one. I think it's quite obvious that there is some risk involved because a lot of corporates work very different to how startups work, and you have this risk that you bring in somebody who ultimately won't work out because of the way that you might want to work. I would also say in this context, it depends on your company. If you are selling to Mittelstand steel companies and there you want to bring in somebody who's done that for 15 years in the steel industry and can open their contact book and do that for you, yeah, you might need that on the first day. Some other companies might need that not for like 5 years. So really hard to say. What I would do actually to mitigate the risk is ask the person to work with you, maybe even paid, but besides what they are working right now. Because probably anyway, they will have more work hours than they have in the corporate life. And if they are not willing to start working with you and kind of figuring out stuff, I would be worried anyway. So I would try to get into like some working collaboration mode and then figure out if that's a good fit in that.
Yeah, nice. Creative. Max, how's that at Spectrum?
Very difficult for me to answer because we have people here which have corporate experience because they worked for, I don't know, Rocket Internet or large startups in Silicon Valley. But they were mostly engineers, I have to say. So I think no business person has had, that corporate experience. And for me, that question is really a little bit about, is that something you need to put an eye on when you're in the interview process when it comes to all the traits we discussed before? Is that something we should check specifically? Or do I hire the corporate person for a completely different reason? But for me, honestly, I cannot. The typical corporate animal, which is really successful in the corporate environment, has fundamentally different skills and managed different environments than you need in a startup. So I think you can wait for that for quite some time. I think it's much more valuable to get that rare person in there, which was in a startup that has grown in your industry. These are the best persons you can hire, which have seen growth before. I think these are the persons you should aim for, and not the impressive name from a corporate. Just because that person comes from, I don't know, BMW or something like this. Of course, BMW is a nice brand, but that brand on the resume is not really helping you in achieving your business goals. It's more just interesting to start a veteran in there rather than a corporate animal.
Yeah, I also like the notion that you say just be aware of this in interview processes, and then still be quite selective in who you hire. And Michael, you already went into it a little bit that you can hire the change makers or the people that actually are not happy with how it's done in the corporate, and then you can bring them in your company to change it around.
Yeah,
is that
exactly.
You would like to add there?
Yeah, maybe just in terms of we have few people with different backgrounds. It's really good to have that diversity of a different environment as well. Maybe a few people can see a few steps ahead. As well, it is a nice blend. But I think one of the things is not this kind of copy and paste mentality is as well, because each startup and each company is different, and you need, I think, having some people with like good systems think in mind of that I'm going to take this scenario for what it is, and that it was done like this on my other big company, and we can just put that in here without really kind of thinking about it. is one of the things to kind of maybe look for in like interview processes as well. So somebody can see like very kind of systems thinking about the company you are now and be quite empathetic about that. What you need now, what's okay now, and we can do that later. So like even like from the hiring point of view, I had like a CFO for a company, and he was from a big company, like a bit larger company, like 3 or 4 steps ahead than this company was now. But he was very flexible and open-minded. He was actually advising the founders to say, like, don't worry about this, you know, you're worrying about something you don't need to worry about now. I've seen this. Let's get this and this done, and we can concentrate on that in a year's time. So it's good to know that people can help, but I think just understanding that in the interview process is important.
Yeah, nice. Great example also. I want to go in, I know it's already time, but I want to take a few minutes for the last question actually before we close down, because I thought it was a really interesting one as well. How much are you as founders involved in the hiring process? I think we covered that, but who is the ultimate decision maker here? Is that you or is that the team? Michael, you're smiling. Maybe you want to take it first.
I shouldn't have smiled. Yeah, I think at the beginning, really, I was really involved a lot in the process, and the team kind of bullied me out of it, you know, subtly over time. I think looking back on it, I think I said it in one of the other questions, like it would have been, if I went back, I would have definitely tried to pass on this knowledge of what I was trying to kind of look for, especially like the culture side, really ingrained to the team. So I listened to this podcast the other day. It was quite interesting method of when you have an on-site interview, you have like a designated interviewer that you kind of, they get a badge. I can actually interview for the on-sites now, and because I learned from this person and then passing it on. I think this flow thing of this could be quite an interesting methodology if I did it again. But ultimately, at this stage, I still gather the information on the debrief and then make the decision, and really embrace quite a lively discussion on that debrief. But ultimately, I still made the decision in Accelerate at the moment, and then trying to pass that over onto the different people as well, but being really open-minded as well. And
at back, Christian.
So at back, we are roughly at 15 people now. So usually the rule is the hiring manager decides, but usually hiring manager is one of the founders. Mm-hmm. I do believe fundamentally until 100 employees or 150 employees, depending on how you manage your company, you should interview every teammate you're hiring, maybe except some interns, as a founder. So we also had this as a rule at my former company, that one of the founders would always interview the candidate, and at a stage where we wouldn't have where basically the hiring manager was maybe the CMO or the marketing lead at that stage. Actually, obviously, you want to give the ability to your team leads to also build their team. So I don't think it makes total sense that then the founder decides which person to pick. But what we established is kind of founder needs to talk to that person, and they have an option to veto. Sometimes it happened. Most times it did not. But I think as a founder, you have the best view of the company culture you want to build, and the actually looking for that. And I think that's also the hardest part to pass on in terms of looking for those little signals and having this, like, because as a founder, you also have a good group dynamic feeling, like how people interacting with that. And maybe we need another person that is a little bit more creative. And we need maybe we need a storytelling person, or like maybe we need somebody who's good at architecture, but a little bit more introverted, because we already have a lot of extroverts. So I think this is really hard to give over to your hiring manager. So I think that's kind of founder duty. So probably at some point you want to hand that over.
Yeah. And for you, Max?
I think it's a very good question, because also that question should guide a little how you design your interview process. Because what you don't want is that you going head to head with the team is saying no and you saying yes. That would be an awkward decision, and then this ultimate decision is you don't want to weaken, your position, because I mean, in the end, you're not directly working with that person all the time, and you probably would go with a team, but obviously you want to avoid that head-to-head decision. I think that's the most important thing here. But also what Christian just mentioned, if the team would be building all the knowledge and all the senses about the candidate without the founder, you would also have, in terms of diversity, you would also have the tendency people hire the same person, or which is fitting exactly in that group again, which is something where you actively have to push against that. You have to be aware of that fact, and you have to hire someone else who probably is not fitting today perfectly in that group, but once he or she is in that group, it will be totally different, and you will be open up, you have more talent available, and you have a better process how you build opinions and thoughts and ideas and so on. So I think that's also the role that the founder has. So, but my advice would be not to design a process where you go head-to-head with the team.
We actually had those situations that you mentioned, where someone from the team was saying, Christian, to be honest, I don't want to work with that person. I think they can't collaborate well. And because our company culture is very collaborative, you can, as a team member, if you would work a lot with a specific person, you can veto that hire basically as well. So you can basically say, this is like a clear no for me. I believe this shouldn't be. Then there's basically the discussion around it. Sometimes it can be cleared out, but most times it's like, I'm actually not excited to work with that person. And then honestly, also doesn't make sense that the people would work together, right? Why should you place together people that don't work together?
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I mean,
please, Michael, closing note.
Okay, pressure's on. So, I think some similar situations like that have happened at Accelerate as well. I think it is important. Yeah, I think there needs to be a clear decision maker though at the end. One of the big ones, if it's like too democratic in a sense, there needs to be someone who is going to say, this is the kind of person that we would like on board, and really kind of still question the team, because it's a big learning process. I think from when I look back when we were hiring at 5 people, hiring at 25 people, it's it's evolving all the time, and we do need to be able to kind of question ourselves, but somebody does probably need to be accountable. We're going to hire this person, because a few times that has happened where even some of the team have been like, kind of unsure, but you're like, okay, let's do it. And then actually in 6 months' time, we were surprised ourselves, wow, what a great hire. We nearly missed out on this. And maybe we need to restructure our interview process to ensure we don't do this again. But yeah, it's a difficult question.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much all for your insights here. We're a bit over time already, so although there are great questions in the question box, we need to close down. So thank you so much, Michael, Max, and Christian, for devoting your time today to answer all the questions. But also thank you to the attendees that sent all these questions and that joined the webinar today. Hopefully everybody leaves today with a bit more wisdom on how to take their early stage hiring from 0 to 1. And feel free to reach out in any case of follow-up questions, and also keep an eye on for other webinars that we're hosting in the future on these kinds of topics. Tomorrow we'll send out a whole summary of the event as well. And thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.